Hello, Soundies. Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 10th of December, 2023. It's great to have you all here. Hope you're all doing well out there. Today we have an exciting topic. Let's go to our agenda here. And the topic today, of course, is the DEITY Theos wireless microphone system. And then we'll, of course, have our regular Q&A session, question and answer. This is a workshop, not a scripted session. There are some limitations here. I'm not going to be able to fully test the wireless system here, obviously. I just got it this week. Also, to fully disclose, I purchased this with my own money. It was not sent to me by DEITY for free. I purchased it just like everyone else. I wanted to make sure I got a copy that came off the production line like everybody else, as opposed to getting a prototype. So that's what we're looking at here today. Then after we covered some of those things here, we will come back to our question and answers, and then we'll go to the chat and see what's going on out there. So again, hope you're all doing well. Let's go ahead and cut to the overhead camera first. So first of all, this is the DEITY Theos system right here. So it is a single dual channel receiver and two transmitters. That's the kit that's available right now. There'll be an additional transmitter that's already been announced that will be coming, I believe, in the new year sometime, that is similar to this, but is also able to provide phantom power. So you can use this for to put on your boom pole to have a wireless boom microphone as well, is probably the main use case for that. So this one is set up for the lavalier microphone. Now, when this was announced back in April, I believe it was, of this year, there were a few things that people got very excited about. So let's go back to the main camera here for just a minute. Let me just kind of put this in context for you. So there's a ton of consumer wireless microphone systems. Rode makes the Wireless Go, the Wireless Pro systems. DJI has their DJI mic. Hollyland has their Lark. Saramonic has one. There are a ton of them, and there are a bunch of other brands too. Those all use the 2.4 gigahertz band, and that's a very, very narrow consumer band that's used for Wi-Fi as well as any other consumer electronics. It's unlicensed. There can be lots of different products that use that frequency, so it can get really crowded. And generally for very kind of straightforward use cases, that can work fine. So I've used it in some corporate video scenarios where I just needed to be able to put a lav mic on somebody. They had the wireless pack just down on the table in front of them, and we just had a camera. So we were operating very, very light in that case, and it worked fine. If you're in relatively close proximity, that's usually going to work okay. Where those systems tend to fall apart is if you go to a stadium for an event and everybody has their phone and there's a ton of wireless activity, those are pretty much, in many cases, just become a no-go. There's just no way to make them work in some of those circumstances. Also, when you start to try to run more than two channels, things can often get a little bit challenging. You'll start to get dropouts, and there's no way to retune it to another frequency. You get 2.4 gigahertz, and whatever happens to be happening there is what's happening, and you have no out. So that's where something like the DEITY Theos comes in as kind of the next step up, is a UHF system. In this particular case, it's a digital UHF system. So that sets it apart from some of the other offerings, kind of the more common ones that you see in this space, which are going to be the Sennheiser EW G4 system. They have 100 series, 300 series, and 500 series, I believe. And then there's also the Sony UWP D system. This is a fully digital system from DEITY. And in that price range, and here we're talking like the $600 to basically $1,000 for at least one channel. I don't feel like there are quite as many options for small receivers. Now, there are a number of options. Shure has some, for example, where you get the kind of the half rack receivers. So that's a different use case than we typically use for video. You can use it for video if you're doing it in an installation kind of setting, but if you're trying to be on the move, it's a little bit harder for most people that are operating in this prosumer range to run around with a rack system. So usually they want to be able to put it on the camera or maybe in a sound bag as opposed to on a rack or on a cart. So that I just wanted to put this in context. And of course, there are the Pro systems that are used typically in video production, that's going to be things like the sound devices, Electrosonics, WYSICOM, ZaxCom, and others. So those are much more expensive, and they're much. This is actually a nice, really nice build that DEITY has done here. I also like that they didn't. This is the receiver, which is not as important, but on the transmitter even, they went much more lower profile on the branding, which is nice. Unlike a lot of the consumer brands where they scream their brand on the transmitter pack, and those packs are made to basically clip up on your, in shot of the camera. So this one is definitely more of a professional system from the standpoint that I think it's going to be really well suited for smaller productions. I think videographers will find this useful. I think news teams will find this one useful. And I think, again, lower budget, commercial, and even narrative productions will find this really, really useful as well. Okay. Let's go take a closer look. So let's go ahead and switch back to the overhead camera here. One of the things that was announced at the time that they announced it in April as well is that it does have a 32-bit float recorder in each of the transmitters. And they had originally planned, even for the US version, to be able to record and transmit at the same time. However, that did not end up happening. Timeout.
We have people saying there's connection issues.
Okay. Self out. Okay. So when they originally announced it, they had planned to have 32-bit float recording and transmission at the same time in all localities, including the United States. Now that it's been released and is actually shipping, they were not able to deliver on the ability to do that in the United States. So you can either record or transmit at any given time, but not both at the same time, for now at least. My understanding is it's probably a patent issue. ZaxCom had filed for and received a patent some years ago. I believe some of those patents start to run out in 2025, but in the meantime, that means that the DEITY Theos in the United States, at least, can either transmit or record, but not both at the same time. So just something to keep in mind there. I think some people are really disappointed about that, but that's kind of more of the legal landscape than a technology landscape. The technology obviously is there, but the legal landscape is tricky. So when you're outside of the United States, however, it can transmit and record at the same time, which is a fantastic feature. So you can have a backup recorder there on the transmitter pack and actually wirelessly transmit at the same time. It is that the system also has a time code built into it as well. And let me just pull up the app here. I'll put this on in the screen in just a minute here. Let me grab the app. Okay, pull this out of the way. I'm going to pull the transmitter out of the way. Let's put my phone here for now. All right, we're going to come back out, and I'm going to turn this on, and it is probably going to create some interference here. I'm working in a really small space with a lot of electromagnetic and a lot of cables going on, so let's hear if this gives us some interference. Give me just a second here. Powering on. Not hearing it at the moment. So I'm going to switch this into recorder mode. The RF power. Okay, so you can see here, RF power is currently off, so we'll pop back out. Okay. All right. What we're going to do is go ahead and reconnect. I have a variety of devices here. This is the Sidus Audio app running on an iPhone here. And let me just make it a little easier to see. Whoops. Turn that off. There we go. Okay. Coming back into the app. All right, here we are. Okay, so you can see right now we have our locale set to the United States, but you can change that, and you can change it manually. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that right now because that is indeed, and that you can choose which frequency band you're going to use. We're going to go ahead and, okay, we're going to skip that for now. We'll come back. We're going to go ahead and click reconnect here to reconnect to the devices that we have going. Okay, it's looking like it's finding them. So here's our transmitter, here's a transmitter, and here is the receiver. Okay, and we can go ahead and jam sync them right now. So I'm going to tap on Sync All. I'm going to go ahead and change this to time of day, and then we're going to go ahead and sync. And that will take just a moment here. I'm going to go ahead and also, we have a fan that came on. Take care of that. Make a quieter environment here. Okay, says that it got those jam synced, and yes, looks like it did. And it's synced to local time. So I chose time of day, and looks like are both, those are jam synced now, so we're good there. So that timestamp, if you record, will also be burned into the metadata of the file that gets recorded here. And to record, there is a little micro SD card. I'd have to power it off and pull the batteries out, but it fits just right up under here. You can see there's the SD card symbol right there. Comes with 32 gigabyte cards, Kingston cards, so they're name brand cards. And that allows you to record for a good long time. In fact, if we started a recording here, let's come into the menu here. There's actually a shortcut for it, and I don't remember what it is, but actually, let's go into the record mode and show you. So we've got it selected to record 32-bit float. You can also drop to 24 if you prefer. And then the sample rate is 48 kilohertz right here. You can also change that, I believe. With 32-bit, I think it's always 48 kilohertz. Something to note there. If you're working on a production where you need 4808, then you might need to look at other options. 32-bit float, but you've got a couple of different record modes. You can tell it to always record, which means as soon as you turn it on, it starts recording. You can do it manually, or there's sync record. I haven't explored sync record yet, but you can see here now I can choose to record. And again, there is a shortcut to this, but as soon as I'm ready to start recording, I just press that. Now you can see that the LED comes on, and that changes to a stop symbol, meaning it is currently recording. So this is how you could send someone off. You can also incidentally turn the LEDs off if you don't want those on. So here we're going to go ahead and stop the recording. And back in. So now I have to get into the menu, I believe I have to long press now, since I'm in record mode. Here's a tip. Somebody has a tip. Record shortcut is hold up button 2 seconds to access the record options. Very good. Okay. So let's pop out. Oh, there. Now I go back to go into this mode. So I'm going to go ahead and change the record mode. Okay, there we are, back to our regular screen here. Now if I wanted to come into the menu, we've got a whole bunch of different options here. Here's where I can turn the LEDs off. So if I want to turn that off, I don't want them to be shining through someone's wardrobe, for example, we can do that as well. But we can also leave them on if we want the information about power and whether or not we're actually sending audio and whether it's recording. So you can also mute the channels from the app here if we wanted to. So we can see this one is now muted. That's where you get the flashing red LED here. And then I can, that's going into the specific channel there, but I can unmute here from the main screen as well. If I want to change some of the settings here, I can go directly in for this particular one. Also have a timecode menu. Again, pop back out. So probably the biggest question you have is, well, how does this system sound? That's probably the most important thing, isn't it? So let's go take a listen here to a recording we made just the other day. So we're switching over to the Mac, and let's go full screen on this. And here we go. You'll recognize perhaps someone here. Wait, we're now getting the interference. Are you hearing that?
Yep.
Okay. Power down. There we go. Okay, here we go. Welcome to our distance test with the DEITY Theos. Today we have
Sound speeds.
And we are here in the mountains. Did you know it's 6,000 feet altitude right here?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So we're just going to take a little walk and try to breathe in this.
That's right. So
Awesome. It's probably about 7,000, feet up to where you are.
Yeah, pretty close. 10 meters. Let's walk and get to 25 meters, shall we?
25
All
meters.
right.
How tall are you, by the
1,
way?
2, 6, 7, 3.
No. In
5,
feet and inches,
6,
not in meters.
7, 8, 9, 6, 7,
Oh, you seem
14,
taller than that.
15. Here we go. 25 meters.
Okay.
All right, 25 meters. Does that look about right? 25 meters, roughly?
I don't know meters.
25 yards ish,
Oh, yards. Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, 25 yards. So we now the transmitters
I'm
are
American.
on.
They're on the wrong side of the body to be transmitting.
Yeah, so we are using the packs where they're often used, which is on the back.
Humans are
least-
big bags of salt water, so you have to transmit through it sometimes, and
Yeah.
that hinders your signal.
Yeah, so
receive, so.
this is 25 meters. Let's keep going, shall we?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, sounds good.
1, 2, 3,
Okay.
5, 6,
I'm just going to take a walk down this hill
9,
then.
10, 11, 12.
Is there a McDonald's down here? You want a fish fillet
14,
sandwich?
16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
I just feel like I'm going to slip on
22,
this because I'm not used to
23,
walking in snow.
24, 25. Here we are
25.
at 50 meters roughly. I have not eaten at McDonald's in probably at least 10 years.
Oh, we got to get you a fillet of fish sandwich then.
Oh my gosh.
You know what? If you don't want that,
I'll get you a fish sandwich, but not
I don't
at
want a fish
McDonald's.
sandwich. I brought you a Zip Fizz though,
Oh, which flavor did you get?
the black cherry.
Oh,
That's like gold.
yeah. Okay, it's like gold. Thank you very much. This is very, very kind of you.
Too bad the people on the camera can't see it, but
They can't see it.
They
but
can hopefully hear
trust-
us.
Trust us.
Yeah,
hopefully you can hear us.
hopefully you
All
can
right,
hear us. If not, then
again,
we're going to look like mimes.
Yeah, not line of sight at the moment. So we're going to turn around. It will be line of sight as we count off to 75 meters. Let's go.
Okay,
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4,
just walking down the hill again.
7, 8.
Let's
9,
see.
10,
I wonder if your head's coming into the shot yet,
13,
because you're pretty
14,
tall.
15, 16.
You think your
17,
head's out of the frame
18,
still?
19, 20, 21.
I mean, we're
22,
approaching what, 75, 100 meters, something like
24,
that?
25. Here we are. 75 meters.
75 meters.
Yeah, I think my head's probably in the shot now. It's kind of big. It's a big head.
Well,
I will
you're
confess
very
that.
tall, is what it is.
Oh.
You can actually see Curtis, all of Curtis, including his head in the shot. Make sure you say so down in the comments below.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Get people engaged.
yeah,
in this whole thing.
absolutely.
Okay.
Get people
Let's,
engaged.
let's go 100,
That's
shall
what we do, right?
1, 2,
100
3,
yards,
4,
100 meters.
5, 6, 7.
You know, about
8,
one of your steps is about 30 of mine, so try not to lose me here.
15, 16, 22, 23, 24. Oh, there's a slip. 25. Here we go. This
I'm glad it,
Okay, so just so you have a sense for a couple of things there, obviously outdoor distance test and what the microphone system sounds like. So each of us were wearing one of the packs with the included lavalier, which is the WLav Pro from DEITY. Nice small microphone. It's about the same diameter as a Sanken COS 11, but I think it's a little bit smaller, not quite as long as the Sanken COS 11. So we were each wearing one of those as we did this test. So you could hear the first dropout when the pack was not in direct line of sight. In other words, we were wearing it on the back on our belts, and when we faced the camera, so it was not in direct line of sight, at 50 meters, we had a little bit of dropout, and then once we got to 75, it was gone once we turned around and did not have line of sight. However, when you have direct line of sight, we did find that up to certainly 75 meters and even up to about 100 meters out in this location at least, it held on to the signal quite nicely. How does that compare? If you compare that to my Sound Devices A10 and A20 system, pretty similar. The A10, A20 held on just a few yards longer with whip antennas. Once you put on a larger log periodic dipole array or shark fin type antennas, usually you can get a little bit farther even than that, and especially when you're trying to penetrate walls and things of that nature. So, of course, the good thing about the DEITY system here, if we go to the overhead again, is that we have SMA connectors on here. So I can actually remove these antennas and I can actually connect an external antenna system. So it is an antenna diversity system, not a true diversity system, but it will switch between the different antennas depending on which one has the better signal. But you can hook up external antennas, including those big shark fins, put those up on a mast. And I think the position of those makes a huge difference, in addition to the fact that they are using a log periodic dipole array. So they're a dipole antenna. So really nice thing that you don't see in most of the other systems in this price range for sure. So that's where DEITY, I think, is really making their play here, is they're providing the types of professional features that you typically only see in the much higher end systems. So good on you, DEITY, for doing that, for including the SMA connectors. In addition to that, let me just pull in here from there's a case that it comes in, which is actually a very nice touch as well. Let me just move those out of the way. Comes in a hard case, Pelican style case. And in that case, it comes in 2 layers. Here's the top layer. And this is where you put the packs when you're not using them. It's a little bit difficult to see. It's such a dark. But it comes with 3 different sets of antennae, and they are optimized for different frequencies. So the shortest ones here, for example, are optimized for 902 to 928 megahertz. We were using the set with the red tips that are optimized for 550 to 608 megahertz. That's typically for those in the United States, you're going to be operating there under most circumstances. And then they also have a set that operates 614 megahertz to 663 megahertz. So you can swap those out depending on which frequency range you're using. In addition to that, on the bottom layer of the kit, you basically can't see, so I'm going to pull those out and bring those over here. For each of the WLAV Pros, of course, comes with the foam cover, a clip. It comes with a little Velcro wrap as well, which is nice touch. Locking 3.5 millimeter connectors. So there are, oops, that's out of the frame. So there are a lot of microphones that are available to you with that type of connector and that termination. It also comes with 2 of the 3.5 millimeter to XLR balanced output cables, and these are kind of a relatively low profile. They're also angled so that when you plug them into your mixer, the cable kind of goes off to a diagonal, which is nice to keep them out of the way so you don't have them contending with each other. Also comes with a 3.5 millimeter locking to 3.5 millimeter for running the audio directly into, say, for example, a hybrid camera. Comes with a USB-C to USB-C cable, so you can plug in the transmitter packs to download all of the files off of them. It has a USB-C port on each of the packs. You can also plug in the transmitter, or the receiver, directly into your computer if you want to run the audio directly into your computer digitally. So that's nice. And then, just to make things easy, it comes with a USB-A to USB-C adapter, which is handy. The firmware updates you do via the app on your phone or tablet. It's actually a phone app. I tried to put it on my iPad and it will run, but it is a phone app, so it doesn't give you the full real estate, at least not yet. Perhaps we'll see a change on that in the future. Okay, and then you heard the audio quality when we played back. So hopefully that gives you a sense. To my ear, it sounded clean. So we were hearing ambient noise instead of self noise from the system itself. We were hearing footsteps. It seemed clean. Their claim in terms of specs is a minus 30 dBu A-weighted in terms of self noise for the noise floor. And that seemed to be coming through. We'll do some additional tests. In fact, I actually think Alan is going to create a dummy connector with a resistor crossing pins 2 and 3 just to specifically measure that. And we'll also have some practical audio tests in the final review that comes out here in the next little bit. So let's pause there. Let's see what questions, comments, and things are happening in the chat. Danny is combing through. Love to hear your thoughts on how audio quality compares to your sound devices setup. Favorably, I would say quite similar. It's not. I wouldn't feel like it's a big step backwards from the sound devices. So, audio quality alone seems pretty close. Yeah. No. amazing for a basically $1,100 kit that has 2 transmitters and a dual channel receiver. The more interesting Theos is still yet to be released, the Limo 3 version that can also supply phantom power. Yes, so that was the one that we mentioned earlier. Thank you for that, Christopher. That's the one that will also be able to power, and you can use that as a boom mic, on a boom mic, so you can have a wireless boom mic in addition to lavaliers. Fachiri, I got to use these 2 weeks ago on a short film. No complaints so far. That's been my experience too. So Alan was here yesterday. We recorded that just yesterday, and our experience, I'll let Alan speak for himself. He'll be doing a review as well, and he's got some really good plans for what he's going to include in his review. But both of us, I think, walked away with the sense of this is so much better than Deity's first. Let's see, I think they had first had the Deity Connect, which was a 2.4 gigahertz system. They had the Pocket system, which I haven't used that. So that's another one, like a lot of the other consumer wireless systems out there. And then they also had the the BPTRX, which was a transmitter receiver all in one unit, also 2.4 gigahertz. My experience with that one was awfully noisy. The recording was clean, but when you transmitted wirelessly, there was the noise floor seemed substantial. So this seems like a huge step forward, and I'm really, really pleased with what Deity has done here. It feels like they've learned from their first few generations of wireless systems, and now they're, I think, a serious contender, certainly with a UHF digital system. Really good. Christopher, my main question on Theos is how usable is it when having to pull out the app every 17 seconds? You don't have to pull out the app every 17 seconds. You can do a full scan and sync to the packs without using the app at all. So you don't have to do that. Yeah, you can do it all from the packs themselves. So that's good news. How do you compare the Theos versus Shure Axient system? Theos can record internal, but what else? There's still I wouldn't assume. First of all, let's take a look at this again. Let's come back to the overhead. So let's look at the receiver. This is not optimized for bag use. You can use it. You'll have to mount it up in your bag. Normally what you do for bag receivers is they slot in this way, and you'll want all your visuals up here on the top. This is not optimized for that. Maybe they'll have one of those in the future. I don't know. So there's some ergonomic things, but also one of the things I noticed yesterday when we were doing a scan, so we got this all set up, and then I set up my Sound Devices 888 with the 2 A20 receivers and did a scan. And what we found was it looked like, visually at least, that the amount of bandwidth that a single channel on the Sound Devices system uses per channel is narrower than what something like the Theos does. So, and I think that's going to be the same thing for the Shure Axient system. What that means in practical terms is that you can probably work in busier RF environments. So again, remember, for professionals, if they're operating in a stadium or at a venue with thousands and thousands of people and lots of RF energy, those systems are going to be probably more effective if they use less bandwidth and more, I guess, more importantly, not more importantly, but also you can fit more channels in when each channel uses less bandwidth overall. So this seems, for its price, what it's doing is really, really impressive, but it's not competing with the Axients and the Sound Devices systems, not yet. So that's my take on it. Now, for a lot of us that are operating on smaller productions, this is going to be fantastic. Sound quality-wise, fantastic. Even the included lavalier microphones, which are, they sound pretty good. At least that's my ear told me. I don't know what your experience was watching back that clip we did with Alan and I. But I think for the price, for the market that this is intended for, it's a really, really good system. So that's where my mind is so far. We have more tests to do, of course, but what is the UHF frequency? So let me just pull something up here before we switch over. Let me get this going here. So this operates in between 550 megahertz and 960 megahertz. So it's a very, very wide band. And the benefit of that is that if you operate it in different countries where different frequencies are available for unlicensed use, you don't have to buy a new kit. And that's another thing that you're going to find with the Sennheiser system and the Sony systems is you buy a kit that it only operates within a certain block or a relatively limited range. This is a much, much wider range right here on the DEITY. So it's a pretty good thing. Vichiri, I would put these on the same level as the G4s, and they function about the same in my testing. Okay. I felt like these are easier to use personally, Vichiri. So 1090 plus about $400 for better lavs puts it in the same ballpark as the 500 series G4s. Okay. I didn't feel like these lavs were lacking in a big way, but again, haven't thoroughly tested them. It's just testing that we did yesterday. One question for later I have is, do you have to increase the gain on the RX incredibly high to power MKE2s on the Theos system? Haven't used the MKE2s. I don't have one, and I have not used it with the Theos system, so I'm not sure. I think the MKE2s, I mean, that's a feature of the MKE2s, not so much the Theos system, I would think. But it's been a long time since I used an MKE2. It's a good mic. But, all right, Nathan says, transmit and record is only for non-US version. They had to create a separate SKU for the global ones. Yes. And that's a matter of the fact that there is a patent held by Zaxcom, and we're operating under US law here. Red Frame Tech. I spoke to Andrew from DEITY at IBC Amsterdam back in September. He confirmed 32-bit float and transmitting simultaneously for the EU, but not for the US. Shame you guys in the US can't have that yet. Thank you. Yes, hopefully in 2025. There are a series of patents. I don't know all of them and which all apply in this particular case, but hopefully by 2025 those will be released and we don't have to own Zaxcom gear to do that.
Somebody was asking how Alan got to be in one ship.
Did Alan get lost? Not at all. No, we just had the fortune of being able to spend some time together. He was coming through the area, and he contacted me, and we decided to get together and spent a good portion of yesterday putting this to the test. So he's got one that has arrived at his home. He's from Georgia, and mine arrived on Wednesday. So he was here yesterday to help test it out.
This is during the playback.
Alan is going to make Curtis lose count. He was trying to. Fortunately, I think I was able to keep count. And incidentally, for those that are not familiar, a yard is equal to 90 centimeters, which is most of a meter, not all of a meter. So a meter is 100 centimeters. A yard is a little bit shorter. Wow. So I was counting based on my stride. When I do kind of a big step, that's about a meter based on previous measurements.
Okay, a lot of people were commenting on clipping.
Noticeable clipping. I'll look at the audio file. Alan overmodulates. I might be able to open that actually and check to see.
That's kind of a joke.
Yeah, he does. I know. It's a joke. I got it.
Okay.
Let's take a look. And that would have been my fault if there was clipping. So we will go take a look here and see what we've got. There was some clipping. Yep. So that's my fault for pushing the gain too high. It's probably mostly Alan, if I had to guess, on his channel. You'll be able to operate this, no problem. That's actually wireless. I think this is Alan's channel. Let's see.
You are wearing a lav connected into your transmitter, right?
Actually, I clipped here as well. The transmitters
I'm
are
American.
They're
on the wrong side of the body to be transmitting.
Yeah, so we are using the packs where they're often used, which is on the back. Okay, yeah, you're right. There's definitely clipping. That's down to the operator. We weren't by the camera, so obviously normally when I would be by the sound bag or at the camera, I could adjust that on the fly. Since we weren't, we did clip. I apologize. The meters on the RX are kind of misleading. At 0 dB on both the transmitter and receiver on both, and 24 dB on the mix pre 10, I hit around minus 14 dB on the mixer, but the RX meters barely register. I did notice that too. The meters are a little bit funny. Not if you go to the overhead here, I'm not entirely sure what they represent. If you take a look, there's no markings, so I need to dig into that and figure out. I would assume that the lower line there is minus 12. And that one's minus 6, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Here on the transmitter, you get a little bit more. Oh, okay, here on the transmitter, the lower line is minus 20, upper line is minus 10, and then, of course, the right is 0. More to come on that. Are you familiar with the Viviana RF whip antenna saver? They claim this passive device helps RF by keeping the antenna away from the body. No, I've heard of the company. I have some of their lavalier hiding accessories, but I have not heard of that, so that's a good thing. Keeping that antenna just a little bit away from the body will help with transmission, should help with transmission, so it's a good deal. Tim, hope you're going to test this mic there in the studio so we can hear what it takes to get them to distort like on the outdoor test. I am not going to do that today. I will in my video that comes out on probably next week if everything goes well, or the week after that, depending on how the tests go. The problem in here is that I've got so many cables. As soon as I turn on the radio on these, I get interference, and I don't want people to walk away and say the system's terrible because it has all this crackling interference noise. That's my setup here. So we're going to test it in a more realistic environment where we're not doing live sound. Christopher, one big limitation is that they don't support down to 470 megahertz. Its usable range means places like Chicago, you only have one 6 megahertz TV channel to park in. Is that entirely true? You mean one in the 470 to 608, you have one channel to park in, but you also have, there's another unlicensed range that this unlicensed band that this supports in the United States, and then also a licensed band. Yeah, you could definitely see that as a downside. I know, for example, my A10s, I bought the kits that the transmitters, the A10 transmitters that transmit from 470 to 5 something. And that's often where I'll end up operating. But yeah, you're right. It only, this one starts at 550. So,
There's lots of comments. It's 12:40, so I don't
okay.
know what you want to do.
USB-C can also power the units. Nice for long runs. Good to know. Yep. Oh, one other thing too. Let's go to the overhead, and then I'll go to the questions that were submitted, and actually a comment that was submitted ahead of time. So if we go to the overhead, it comes with these batteries. These are lithium batteries. These are disposables. Don't be mistaken. These are not rechargeable batteries. With these, they say you should be able to get about 10 hours. It seems to be tracking that way on the receiver. And then with other battery chemistries, you're going to get a little bit less. So depending on which battery chemistry you use. And in fact, if you look at the Mac here, I believe, for there are a couple of charts here that show. So the top one, of course, is the DEITY lithium disposable battery. I typically use these IKEA Lada batteries, and they're coming in a little bit over, looks like around 9 hours on the transmitter and around about 7 hours on the receiver. So the receiver will typically run out of battery power first. And I believe, as Mark says, you can power the receiver via that USB-C port, which is nice. Camille has just offered some funds here for a distance meter with a running wheel. Very good, thank you. Yeah. Okay, let's go take a look at, there are a couple things that came in ahead of time on the questions, so we're going to take a look at those really quickly. First is from Amrita. I've just bought the Sennheiser G4 500 series, and I'm wondering what might be the advantages of DEITY Theos over the Sennheiser G4. We talked about some of those, Amrita. One is potentially an advantage, or maybe not, depending on what locale you're working in. But the range. So it offers a wider range, although it doesn't necessarily cover down to 470, as was pointed out here just a moment ago. So that's a potential advantage when you're moving from country to country. The trick with the G4s is you typically have to buy a relatively more limited range of frequencies at which the kit that you purchased can work at. So if you do have to operate in a different country, for example, if you're traveling and the kit that you have is not an unlicensed series of bands in the country that you're going to, then you have to get a different kit to operate legally. So that's one advantage. I feel like the Theos is easier to operate. Again, once you learn the G4, that'll be fine under most circumstances. In theory, although I don't know, I have a definitive answer to this, relative to the G4. In theory, digital systems can generally run more channels in the same bandwidth, or in the same range, or amount of bandwidth, I guess I should say, versus analog systems like the G4. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's kind of my high level there. I would say also, I don't know, I haven't used the 500 series, but the lower end G4s have a good bit of plastic in their build. The Theos is pretty much all aluminum on their build, so they seem like maybe they probably hold up a little bit better over time. Next question from Amrita is also, how busy or relaxed is the UHF digital system in terms of scanning and getting free frequencies? That depends on the locale in which you're doing the scanning. So again, UHF digital can usually use, for an individual channel, a smaller slice of spectrum to operate. But it seems, it's UHF, so it's going to be very, very similar to what you're finding with the G4. What's available in your locale when you do a scan, that'll be the answer to that question. But in theory, at least, again, you should be able to fit more channels, or be able to dodge other potential RF sources using the Theos. So it's kind of it's a pros and cons. Lots of people are using the G4 500 series with great success. That's a fine sounding system. So that's kind of the high level there. All right, the next one is actually a note from Barry. Barry was concerned about traveling to other locales and being locked in. So for example, if Barry bought this in the UK and then went to go to another country to operate it, their concern was, well, is it going to, do I have to connect my phone via the app to the system before I can use it in this new locale and be able to switch to the other frequencies that I need to? And the short answer, both from my experience and from what DEITY support says, is yes, the Theos devices can be used without the Sidus app, without location information, and allow the user to manually set and pair frequencies on the transmitter and the receiver. You can set them in the menu. So for those that had a concern about that, it doesn't appear to be a problem. It looks like they're selling different SKUs, as I said before, as someone noted before. They're selling a U.S. version, and they're selling an international version, or a non-U.S. version. So if you're worried about being tied down, going to other locations, you can switch where you're operating. Okay, that's it for the questions that came in ahead of time. Let's go back to the chat. We have a few more minutes here. Which would you choose, EWDP or DEITY Theos? I would probably at this point choose the DEITY Theos. So far in my initial tests, the Theos is transmitting farther than the Sennheiser, and it's a little bit easier to use, and out of the box, it's a dual channel system. So yes, it's more expensive. You can make the EWDP dual channel sort of by adding an additional transmitter and receiver pack, and they magnetically stack on top of each other. But as an integrated system, I feel like the DEITY is a better, to me, if I'm spending my money, which I am, and I bought this as opposed to the EWDP. I'm very impressed with the Theos kit so far, from Mark. This works great with the COS 11D mics, loaded with features, and the cables seem good quality. Mark, you brought up a good point I wanted to point out as well. If we go back to the overhead camera again, let me just show you one other thing here. Too many things switching between. Okay, so here on the transmitter, one of the things you find on a lot of the consumer systems is that the amount of bias power they provide for the external microphone is quite low, in many cases below 3 volts. And that could be problematic depending on if you want to use a higher quality lavalier microphone. You'll see here, I need to find where it is in the system here. Here it is. Okay, so if I come back up, if I go into the level menu, I can choose the bias power, and I can switch between 3 volts and 5 volts. So again, if you're using external microphones, for example, the Senken COS 11 typically requires 5 volts. Can you run it with lower voltage? Yes. Will it damage it? Possibly. I don't know. But this can be switched up to 5 volts, so you have a little bit more leeway versus a lot of the consumer systems where they're just tied in at whatever they supply. And some of them supply as little as 1.5 volts. And you don't typically want to run your electronics undervolted like that. So Christopher says, Shure Axient Digital is 17 channels in a 6 megahertz TV channel and 45 channels when in high density mode, which does limit you to 2 milliwatts power, so you get less range. So that's a good example, thanks for that, Christopher, to illustrate kind of the difference between something like the DEITY Theos, which is a really great system, versus the very high-end systems, which are allowing you to use far more channels in the same amount of bandwidth. So it's kind of a different league altogether. Javier, would you recommend this for a young man like myself that's working to start his on-video production company for the Caribbean? Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I think it's a great place to start. Or the Rode Wireless Pro. I would choose this, without question. I would choose this. Although the argument could be made, I have not confirmed this, but I have heard that there may be a lawsuit that has been filed by Zaxcom against Rode for the Wireless Pro. Not 100% sure on that, but if that's the case, it's probably around the whole idea of being able to record. Well, there's the recording at the same time as transmitting, plus there's also the time code. That there may be something there. And I don't understand the patents 100%, but it looks like there may be some legal action going on there for those that are operating in the United States, at least. So I would personally probably, if you want something that's super simple and you're mostly a camera operator, and you're not operating at great distances, and you're not typically operating at like venues or big events where there are lots of people and lots of RF, then I think a Wireless Pro is probably a pretty easy system to use. However, I think this is easy enough. I would probably choose something like this as opposed to a Wireless Pro, personally. Mark says, I use the Theos frequency scan with a couple of G4 transmitters on it, found and isolated all of those, and set up frequencies of the DBTXs with no problems. Excellent. In that case, you're getting also, Mark, into intermodulation, so it's really good that it was able to do that nicely. It definitely eats up bandwidth quickly when you start getting into intermodulation. How can you leverage the TC-1 system to be used with these? Can you jam them with a TC-1, and are they as accurate, so no drift? So we haven't done a drift test on this yet, but it looks like they're using probably the same crystal oscillator, temperature compensated crystal oscillator in these. So if we go back to the app, I can show this again. To answer your question, let's go to the overhead camera. Just to answer your question here, got my little pad here, keeps riding around. You'll notice here that I've got the DEITY timecode Slate. I've got 3 TC1s here. They're not currently connected, but they are integrated into the exact same app. And I can literally, once all of those are online and we're connected, I can tap sync all, and all of them will be jammed together. And even if they drift over time, which I doubt that they probably will in terms of like a realistic production day, I can rejam them all right here from the app as well. So, or I can go around and manually rejam them as well. So you can do that directly in the menus if you prefer to do it that way. So you've got lots of options here. That's how it integrates. It's an integrated system. So all of the timecode products from DEITY work perfectly with these as well. That's another thing that adds some value. Nathan says, also the global versions come with a different set of antennas and a cut guide to optimize them. Oh, that's interesting. So sometimes on the Pro systems, you'll find you get whip antennas that have not been cut to length yet, so they're pretty long. And then you've got a guide that shows you where to cut them if you're going to use them for specific frequencies. And then once you cut them, you put the little, this little kind of rubberized cap on the top, or plastic cap on top. So good to know about that. Matt says, I'm 6'3" and have a full yard. So if you're 6'7", then your stride was about a meter. There you go. Derek is also 6'3". Is there advantage to being tall in audio? Seems common here. Well, one advantage is that when you're booming a microphone, you're less likely to need an Apple box. And I very rarely have to go boom above my head for an extended period of time. For the longer shots, I can almost always boom down here, it's much easier to do that for a longer shot than being up above like that. So that's one advantage for being tall. Christopher says, for the full review, should also test the distance where the remote control from the app drops out versus the audio dropping out. Oh, okay. So checking the range for the control app as well, which is operating via Bluetooth. Yeah. Typically, that's going to be 30 meters. And Christopher underscores the point that 550 to 608 only has one open TV channel in Chicago specifically. Here, we didn't run into that problem, but it's different in different locales. The way around the patent is to do what we pros have done for years, buy them in the EU. There are many issues over the years with U.S. patent. That's the easy fix. I don't know what happens when you need service, but yeah, you can buy them in another locale. I don't know the legalities there. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not necessarily saying you should do that. Are there patents for digital audio over UHF radio? If not, I would expect to see digital transmission in low-end devices like the Rode system soon. The necessary tech is cheap. Well, they are using, I believe they already are using digital transmission for all those for those 2.4 gigahertz consumer systems, yes. Some number of years ago, all of the consumer systems were analog, but all of those 2.4 gigahertz systems are digital. All right, from Yannick. Also noticed the incorrect meters on the TX had to hold the lav about 5 centimeters away from my mouth to get minus 20 dB visually with plus 30 dB on the transmitter. Yeah, there's something funny going on with those meters, it looks like. One positive from Mark. One positive for the Theos system's wideband capabilities being able to take advantage of the guard band, 614 to 616 megahertz, and duplex gap, 653 to 663. Indeed. Make sure that you do your research to find out which of them can be used unlicensed and which need some licensing for you to use them. Mark says that he is 5'5" and has no idea what his stride is. I'm going to guess it's probably not a meter.
It can be a nice afternoon project.
That'd be a lovely afternoon project indeed. So again, we're barely just scratching the surface here. Appreciate that all of you were able to come today. We have just a couple more minutes. If you have another question, go ahead and mark it with @CurtisJuddAudio, and we will take a look at that if we can here. So overall, my impression so far is that if I had to choose between G4 or UWDP or Theos, I would probably choose Theos in most circumstances. The UWDP is nice if you're going directly into a camera, into a Sony camera in particular with one of the smart shoes. So you can do that directly. But otherwise, Theos to me so far seems like the best buy amongst those three for a 2-channel system. Well, I don't think G4 is a 2. Mark clarifies the 2 bands that he mentioned are unlicensed in the United States, so they are available for use as well. So there's some additional bandwidth there you can use. A lot of the G4, I don't believe it will operate in those, and same with the Sony UWDP. Cool. So good job, DEITY. It's looking good. I'm excited about it, and I think it's my suspicion is that this is going to be a system. They will probably add additional transmitters so they're going to have a pack that looks sort of like this that also has a 3-pin LEMO connector which can supply phantom power, so you can use that for a boom microphone like a shotgun or a pencil condenser on your boom. They'll probably, if I had to guess, they'll probably have a plug-on transmitter at some point, and possibly some others. Maybe they'll have a small, maybe the thing that you're seeing, Sound Devices, for example, also has a smaller pack that won't power as long, but is easier to conceal. Christopher says, another question, does Theos or the app facilitate frequency coordination with more than 2 receiver units? I don't know the answer to that, Christopher. I just have the single kit here. I mean, obviously, when it does its scan, if there's another kit that's already set up, it will recognize those in any intermodulation, and it will assign frequencies around that in as much as they're available. But I don't know if it does any sort of optimization by talking across receivers, or the app manages across receivers. I don't know the answer to that in any sort of more sophisticated way other than saying, oh, there's something operating at this frequency. Pachiri says, you coordinate the RX, so technically, yes. I mean, yeah, like I said. Yeah. Also, I should mention, thanks, Nathan. I definitely heard, let's get Nathan's note here. I definitely heard rumblings of a 4-channel receiver and an IFB system. You can incidentally use this as an IFB. So just to demonstrate here, I'll just, this is the receiver. So it does come with a belt clip, and you can change the outputs to headphone. So you could use this as an IFB or a camera hop, which is nice. Again, it was always like on the G4, it was a little bit of a hack. It wasn't really made for that. So this is actually, you could do that. It's a dual channel receiver, so, but it works. It has all the settings to support that. Also, the transmitters will accept a line in. So if you're feeding out audio from your mixer at line level, transmit from the transmitter to the receiver for someone that's wearing a set of headphones, works nicely as an IFB then.
Several people mentioned that Rode bought Mackie.
Oh yes, some news this week. Rode, or Rode's parent company, I'm not sure which, bought Mackie. So now the Rodecaster Pro 2 and the Mackie DLZ are technically the same company. So that's interesting. I don't know what to make of it yet, and it'll be interesting to see as time goes on what that means in practical terms. Was Mackie struggling financially? I don't know. I don't know the answer to those questions. But it'll be interesting to see what transpires from here. I'm not sure the context of this, but Mark says they are also working on a fin antenna. Oh, okay, so DEITY is working on they have the little bow tie antennas, but they're probably working on a proper fin antenna as well.
Is that the same as a butterfly?
The butterfly is what is often called, it's also called a bow tie, but yeah, butterfly, bow tie. And then the shark fin is the larger log periodic dipole array. I have already been able, this is from Camram, I've already been able to test my Theos with DPA lavaliers and have a tick in 0.5 seconds on the receiver when Bluetooth is turned on. Do you have any idea why this is so? I don't. I think it may have to do with the shielding and the DPA lavaliers. Not sure, but you probably want to contact DEITY and see what you can find out there.
Okay.
All right. It is time to go and make some good sound. So everybody get out there, make some great sound. We will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.